was um, the invitation was more around you guys wanted to hear about what we're doing at Emory, kind of share how we've done it. More of a dialogue is the sense I get. Maybe a conversation is probably the best we could do because um, I'm happy to just kind of share whatever we've developed. But I can level set real quick. My name is Professor Joe Sutherland. I'm a professor of quantitative theory and methods at Emory University. That's a really fancy title for essentially what means just data science. It's like our data science department. Um, I also have appointments in our healthcare system and in the provost's office in order to administer this thing that's called AI.Humanity. Um, so AI.Humanity is a big initiative at Emory University that is now, if you do the math on it, it now represents an investment in excess of about $200 million into artificial intelligence at Emory. And, like a lot of people ask me, why did you go and join Emory to start this AI thing? And, if you don't know about my background, I've kind of had lived three lives. Like one life, I was an entrepreneur and eventually an executive. I was an executive at places like Cisco and Amazon and a few startups. I was the CEO of an AI company I started. Um, I had a second life working at the White House during the administration of Barack Obama. Uh, I was in his Office of Scheduling in Advance, which allowed me to really participate in a lot of really cool policy initiatives that I think really zoned in on like the people who really most needed them at a great scale. And my third life is, for some reason, I went and got this PhD and decided I want to be a faculty member at a university, which is just so I've always really enjoyed like knowledge creation and learning, and I wanted to share the joy of that with students, and also I got to be honest, like my wife all the time is like, I don't know if you ever see these memes online, but like I'll be kind of laying in bed thinking, and she's like, "Are you mad at me?" And I'll be like, inside my head, and be like, why is this regression not working? There's just something about like I'm always thinking about the research, and I can't stop thinking about it. So that's kind of that third life. Um, Artificial intelligence represents the nexus and intersection of those three things, right? Entrepreneurship and business in a lot of ways, policy in a lot of ways, and science in the development of what we do for research in a lot of ways. And this initiative at Emory I thought was really interesting because when we started it, we said, well, we don't want to be, for example, a Georgia Tech, and it's nothing against Georgia Tech. I love Tech. I got lots of friends at Tech, but they're an engineering school that's really focused on developing, the more complex, bigger, badder models, right? And applications of those in the devices space, for example, uh, new chips, new electrical armoires, et cetera. See, you can tell electrical engineering is not even my field. I don't know what you do at electrician. Um, at Emory, what I say when we hire faculty is, look, if you want to go do that stuff, that's great. Go to Georgia Tech and do that. But if you come to Emory, focus on, bringing your subject matter expertise in the area where you are the expert and combining that with the best tools that our society has ever had, which are artificial intelligence tools. And so we've hired now 49 tenure track faculty at the university, which, just to put it in perspective, is like creating like a Bowdoin College. I think that's kind of crazy. And we've hired them. We have 9 schools at the university, including a school of theology. It's very unusual for for places to have something like that. We've hired them in every single school, and the hope is that through these investments, we can, number one, remain competitive when it comes to earning sponsored projects and other types of research engagements, because I do think that in order to remain competitive for NIH money, for example, we get a ton of NIH money, NSF money. You have to have the latest and greatest tools, and you have to have access to this. And a lot of people in the humanities, where Emory is particularly strong, don't always have access to that training and tool set. So we wanted to make sure we invested in that. Um, uh, but I also think there's another piece of it, which is the future of our society when it comes to technology is not something that can be done in a vacuum or a silo. And only through combining expertise across all these different areas can we really do AI for the benefit of humanity. That's really where it all comes back to at Emory University. So that's the intro spiel. Um, I think we could just have a general conversation. I'm happy to share insights, thoughts, take questions, and I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much.
Mm, Let me start off, Joe, with a question. If you could provide us with a historical context on how, you know, how when did Emory decide they wanted to make an impact in the AI space within the university and outside? And how did that decision turn into the creation of AI.Humanity and the Center for AI Learning, and then your involvement, you being brought into head? And so could you provide some historical context as to what the university's thought process was? Was it something that came bottom up from the faculty and students, or was it the president and the provost who decided, well, we want to make an investment and we're going to create this center and we're going to look for a director, and then you come, you are selected? I'm just curious about that.
Yeah. So, the university business model is changing, right? Like, I think historically there have been kind of three different ways to do it, right? One is you go and you remind the alumni how amazing they are and how much they've benefited in their lives from their education. And then at the end, you say, and we just really could use a little bit more money. And then you ask them for a donation, right? So and especially for the really distinguished big dollar donors, Emory has been unique because if you really look at like Emory's big donor network, it's a fairly small set of people, right? Like it's kind of like 20 large families, all sort of semi-related to like Coca-Cola somehow. It's and there's a reason why that network developed because in Atlanta, we call it the Atlanta way, which is the way you do things in Atlanta is it starts from the business community, everybody talks, everybody figures it out, and then there's a deal that's struck for the benefit of like the city or the society or whatever we do, right? Like a great example is the Buckhead police, the police Atlanta PD needed to put in like a police branch in Buckhead, and so one of the property developers there just said, "Hey, I'll give you the space, basically for free. Just come and put it there, right?" And like that's how things kind of work. It's very network based. Um, it's hard to rely on those sort of stable. It's not very stable over the long run for income sources from donors like that. And you have to diversify your donor base if you want to remain competitive in the future, especially as your alumni networks grow and as you get more small dollar donations, and you have to have something to rally around. So that's part of like how that's a global problem that a lot of universities are facing. And it's something that we have to think about. Um, the second big way that universities make a lot of money is through research funding, right? And sponsored projects of some sort. And I don't know if you guys have followed a lot of the politics around the NSF and NIH and how a lot of the major funding organizations from like a governmental level, from a public level. But there's a lot of criticism of them lately. Like one of the main criticisms that's been lodged actually is that they only invest in projects that have like concentrated resources already invested into them, and it decreases the incentive and opportunity for younger researchers to be innovative in new areas of research. And I mean, to the point where, I mean, people have been starting, even political candidates have started to politicize it a little bit. And I don't know where that goes. I think it's an interesting trend, but there is a sort of hope that with more access to democratized, great tools, there could be a more competitive research funding environment, especially for fields where historically you haven't gotten a lot of like government public funding, like the humanities, literature, English, things like that. Uh, there's a third big trend. Oh, by the way, universities have expanded way faster than the public funding has expanded as well. And you know, there's certain constraints to go along with it. The third one is tuition, right? So, you know, you have students who come to the university, they pay you bucks, they get a great degree, and they go forth, and the whole cycle continues again, right? So, like that's the third big way. Now, at Emory, a few years ago, this is like thinking 2021-ish. Um, you know, there's a big discussion at the board of trustees. You know, President Fenves, you know, Robbie Baumkonda was just coming in, I believe, around the time, and the conversation was, you know, in this environment, what is our strategic advantage, and how do we differentiate ourselves, and how do we remain competitive for all those research, you know, dollars? And you know, we have one of the largest healthcare systems in the southeastern United States. I actually think it is the largest in the South. And you know, so we have to remain competitive. And the story that came out, actually, this was one of the interesting stories, was you know, we were kind of talking through what previously had happened when people hadn't kept up with research innovation, and there was a type of like biological microassaying technique of some sort that essentially, like, there were a bunch of the old school labs that they were like, we're never going to use that, you know, like, you know, we're going to keep our old ways. And then there were the new labs that went and used that. And within like 5 years, every lab that didn't use that technique like had no more money. And you know, part of it's because, especially in, you know, procurement and some of these bureaucratic processes for the government, like they actually will ask you, like, do you have this technology available? Check. Do you have this? And if you don't check that box, you won't even qualify for review. You know, so there are reasons, and sort of, you need to invest to be competitive. And so that was the initial story that took hold, almost like a risk mitigation. I mean, or maybe not more like a maintenance strategy in a way. Um, the secondary conversation was around, well, you know, we really do have a positioning opportunity. Like when students, because we, you know, we compete for a different, we can, Auburn and Emory, you compete for a different type of student than you do if you're like going to FSU, right? It's a more of a, we're not trying, or GSU would be the perfect example, right? Like GSU trying to educate everyone, make sure everyone has opportunity. Emory is like, we're going to take you in. It's an elite university. You got to work really hard, and you're going to get the best jobs, and you're going to be a leader, you know, stuff like that. And you know, artificial intelligence is going to be one of those great problems that our society faces in business and every field, right? And in the law and healthcare and nursing, and even in ethical study. And we thought, well, if we're going to keep true to our message, we need to be investing in this so we can prepare our students. And so that's where we kind of took this AI for the benefit of humanity tack. Those conversations freed up, you know, a good amount. You know, also, you have to remember, back during the pandemic, the endowments actually, if they were managed well, got juiced. You know, because the stock market went way up. Part of that was because of the stimulus and the way that, like, sort of, you know, new money supply things happen. But you know, some clever accounting at a lot of universities, Wash U, right, is one too. Enabled people to free up some extra, you know, capital. And when we funded it, right, it was actually primarily like you know, a lump sum taken out from the endowment that ended up funding the investments that we've been able to make. We don't do overhead. You know, I mean, there's a whole nother story here, by the way. Like, you know, overhead rates. I don't know if you guys knew this. Like, you guys know do you all know what overhead is? Does anybody not know what overhead is? I can't see a lot of faces, so I'm seeing nods, but like, come off mute and tell me if you don't know. Okay.
No.
Oh, no? Okay. Okay. So not Emory, universities have this thing, this concept called overhead, which is like, and this actually started back in the, I think it was like the 40s or 50s, when universities started getting big money from the government. And essentially what the universities would say is, look, researchers, you know, you can apply for grants. Go to the NSF, ask for money, ask for $1 million. But there's certain types of research that you can't do unless you have access to shared facilities that we provide, such as wet labs. And I mean, in some places, like, believe it or not, Chicago used to have like a nuclear reactor on campus, nuclear reactors, things like that, right? And in return, we're going to ask for a small amount of money to support that shared collective good, right? Which is like, we're going to ask for 10%. I think the average, it was like 10% or something like that. Over time, overheads grew and grew and grew. And by the time we got to like, I think it was the 70s or 80s, the overhead rate was in excess in some universities of 80%. And so if you're a researcher, you go get $1 million from the government, the university says, why, thank you. I'll take $800,000 of that and leave 200,000 for you to do your research. Um, because we're providing you with shared facilities so that you can do it, right? And there's some problems there. Now, when you think about artificial intelligence, like software is, you don't need shared facilities for that, right? I can go home on the weekend and on my own laptop, I actually can train ChatGPT. A lot of people don't realize that. It's like you could do ChatGPT on a laptop with like a neural net you built in like a day. Now, of course, you don't, not the same level of complexity or nodes, not, there's little pieces, but like the basic transformer architecture that powers like GPT-3, do that in a day on your laptop. Where's the shared facility? And so one of the other strategic opportunities that we have with investing in these technologies is sort of in helping reshape the way we think about revenue management and partitioning at the university, because overheads have gotten lower over time. Actually, the university ended up, the government ended up negotiating with individual universities to actually establish what are called global cap rates on the negotiated overheads. And the problem with that is then it's not dynamic. It's just the government told us we take 57%, so that's what we take, right? And so there's an opportunity with tech, I think, to create new revenue streams that are differentiated from this sort of weird, bloated, potentially. This is nothing against anybody in research administration or anything else. It's just kind of the way the bureaucracy has evolved.
So I have follow-up question, and then I don't want to take up all the time with my questions. But then you came in, and now what do you see evolving over the next, say, 5 years for Emory in the AI space in general, and particularly for the center that you're leading? And how are you said something like 50 faculty have been hired across all colleges or schools of the university. Are they all participating in your center? Or is it more like each school decides how that faculty would work and contribute to AI and not really connected with the center? How are you connecting with this other new faculty in other schools from the perspective of your center?
Yeah. So, great question. So I should mention the process we've put in place for investing in these faculty, 49 tenure track faculty, has been really democratic and governed by faculty search committees and departments and deans, right? So like the way we structured it is it's just as any other sort of like TT request you would do for any sort of TT line, but there's an additional opportunity to apply for co-funding through the central funding line mechanism that we've created. And so it goes through the usual process, which is the departments get their line allocations from the deans. They go and do a search. They find the people. Sometimes it's open rank, sometimes it's not. They go back and nominate those people, and they're reviewed, and they're all that stuff, right? And then the deans and faculty advisory committees at a more global level will adjudicate amongst like, okay, do we want to fund this as a co-funded line? Is it a partially funded line? How do we want to do it? And so there's just a lot of flexibility through the process there and how people determine what we wanted to happen. And I, for example, this is all carrots, right? It's like there's no real sticks. It's a carrot-driven democratic process. Now, all those faculty, of course, once they came, we promised them, we were like, hey, you're going to come, you're going to be part of a dynamic AI community. And then they came and they're like, where are we meeting? And we were like, we got to, okay, hold on, we got to start the Center for AI Learning where everyone could come and meet, right? And yeah, it's kind of cool because it's like and also we had to do it so it was politically viable. So we got to go and do it in a central body that is like sort of like the federal government. It's like, the DMZ, right? As opposed to any, oh, the college owns it or the business, like it's got to be in the centrally owned body. So we started it at a global, university level, and all the faculty, across all the departments that we've put them in, all roll up into this Center for AI Learning as a separate, like structure, so that they can then go and collaborate and be a part of shared research opportunities. For example, we applied to be a member of this US AI Safety Institute. And and we were actually we prevailed in our proposal, mainly because we were able to say, like, look, all the faculty we have draw from all these different disciplines, and we're going to be a great resource and a mind bank you can tap. And in healthcare, healthcare is also something that differentiates us. And so all the faculty came together through the center to go and achieve that, right? So there's things like that collectively I think the center solves. But we can't necessarily force people to go and like pursue a shared research agenda, because there's no equivalent of like industrial policy in academia outside of gigantic grants, right? So it's like, if we bring in we have brought in grants, by the way. When we bring in a grant, we're not like, you're going to work on this, you're going to work on this, but we do say like, hey, you want to be part of the grant, like, got to come work on that subject matter. So there's a little bit of that focusing. And I try to focus on stuff that's like unique to Emory, right? As opposed to, oh, why don't you go and, work on, I mean, everything's, your customer lifetime value model is fantastic, right? I love CLV. You're doing Bayesian algorithms to go develop a better CLV. It's more customized. I'm like, that's awesome. That fits in this branding bucket from the business school. It doesn't, and kind of making sure that when we market and communicate, it all works. The big place where we've seen a lot of success has been in the student programs. So, I think to bring faculty together and to bring anybody together, there's no better way than to just like invest in the students, right? I mean, like, so we've built programs that focus on experiential learning in particular for groups of students to go get connected with like marquee partners. I mean, we're like one of the designated AI partners for the city of Atlanta. They come to us to, have us assign students to work on stuff for them, which is then cool because, I mean, here's a good example. Like, the students were working with the entrepreneurship, committee for the city to build a chatbot that for any entrepreneur, they could just go and get personalized advice based on kind of all the, they trained it on like the strategic business school documents about different industries and stuff. So like, instead of going to Ernst and Young, which costs an entrepreneur $100,000, you can go pay $5, for the electricity to run this GPT and get some pretty good strategic advice on like what you're doing and what you should be doing, and that's like a public good, because a lot of their focus is on like underrepresented founders. Like, I love having the students get connected with really cool projects that like usually people couldn't pay for, but we can do. It's like a nice partnership. Some people do pay. We do have some sponsor projects that the students work on that, I mean, they come in at the either 50, 70,000 dollar level. And I think that's where the faculty get more engaged, because they're more like, they get some money, they get a ninth or something. The students are in a research lab doing the work. And of course, there's like curricular things where we'll, like, I think now we have an experiential learning requirement on the transcript. So if you want to graduate, you have to have had like a co-op, not a co-op's not the right word, but like a real project that you worked on. And we also supply those opportunities for the students too. So that's kind of where it's evolved to. Hopefully that answers your question.
Oh, and this is, oh,
Cheryl.
I think I'm echoing just a little bit, but I put some questions in the chat. So, and I think you already answered some of these, thinking about when you hired that large group of faculty, was it a thematic hiring? And then with your research projects, is it more thematic or individual or both? And then the final part, could you share any very, very interesting project or theme area for the year that's emerging?
So, yeah, so the hires have not been particularly thematic outside of the fact that they may use artificial intelligence as a method in their research subject matter expertise. So that's like the minimum criteria. We have done some focus on like, we did a cluster hire, we called it a cluster hire and ethics focus. So, we hired like a really good, set of folks in the law school, some good ethicists. One of them actually went in the data science, the QTM department. And that was on a focus on like, because we can speak uniquely to what does responsibility look like in artificial intelligence, as what we some of our scholars research what did the Hebrew Bible say about AI, right? Like, because we have a school of theology, and actually, believe it or not, it says something like, like the golem is like AI, so they that type of analysis is something that we can do uniquely, ethical analysis. you know, themes for the projects. I say the themes that we've tried to develop, and again, we have to be careful because we don't want to we want it to happen organically. We don't want to like force work on people because it's just a recipe for disappointment in a lot of ways. Not only of us, but like our external partners. We don't want to burn any bridges. So we've tried to put a focus, and I think it's a well-fitting focus on AI for the public good as part of this AI for humanity brand that we've been building. And I think that that's been successful because there's a lot of projects that like, I think some faculty would kind of turn their noses up if there wasn't any money attached to it, but we've been able to do it so that like, I have some donors, for example, that are like, just use my money to do good. Like, that's all I want. And then we use that to fund the projects that are then as a public service to, whatever. But then we bring the donors in who get to meet all the cool movers and shakers that we're doing the stuff for. So it's an ecosystem, right? More than it is just an exchange there. Other questions?
Thank you. There's another question in the chat.
What does it say?
How would you advise an organization that can't hire out a consulting firm and that they want to build out a large language model to use internally with their employees? They would need to know how to build a Llama 3 model, load it from Hugging Face, and then use a retrieval mechanism like the RAG. Where would one even start with that? Because that's a lot.
So are you talking about like, give me the use case. Is this like Auburn is trying to hire a consulting firm to build?
Well, no, let's say it's a city government.
Okay.
So, there's not a lot of funding there. And for one, you've got to buy all the resources, you got to get the hardware, right? So that's going to be a lot of money spent there. And so then also you've got to look at what you're going to use to do all of that. So you're going to need some kind of, way to build that. Like you could use Meta's Llama 3, right? And then you could go and host over here from this Hugging Face. And then, well, how are you going to retrieve that? So you'd have to make a RAG. So where would one even start without having to go and hire someone, contract someone out to do that in their IT department?
And are you speaking from like sorry, give me a look like, who is one? Who is the person who's the one? Is it a faculty?
Okay, let's say
Auburn? Is it just a city?
Okay, so for an example, I'm kind of helping out a city government near, and they want to look into implementing this AI project. And so they reached out to me about some information, what one can do without having to go and hire somebody. And they're like, well, we want to do this, you know, we want to get a large language model going through Llama 3, and we want to, you know, get it from Hugging Face. And then we need a RAG set up so we can get it talking with everything, like our GIS. And also, you know, we want our employers to use it so they can retrieve any documents they've got, which they've got at house, I don't know, say laserfish or whatnot. So they're wanting a lot of things going on there. So they're like, we don't even know where to start, but we can't hire anybody to do this for us because we have to buy all the resources, got to get the computing resources and so on.
So the first question I would ask them is like, what are your main objectives with this? You know, because it sounds like they want to do something cool, but you know, like GIS is not an LLM problem, right? Like that's a different type, you know. And so it sounds like maybe they're trying to start up an enterprise search function, but like what's the enterprise
That
search
is.
trying to do? Like what are they trying to, you know, a lot of people start with enterprise search and they're like, I just got to get all the data in one place. And then they get all these people going to get the data all in one place, all the data, you know, and then like, you know, okay, all the data's here. What were we trying to do again? You know, it's like, I think you got to start with the use case and the objective before you go and try to go and just, oh, let's just get it all in one place. Because otherwise you sort of lose the point of why you were doing it to begin with. That's the first thing I'd say. And then I would say like, you know, do you guys know what your biggest opportunities or problems are, right? I mean, like in city government, one of the biggest problems right now, and will be continued over the next 8 years, is like employee retention. And you know, they can't keep people coming back to work for the city, so they end up losing like the brain drain. They lose the talent, and ultimately that hurts the people who are trying to get city services because nobody gets their tickets taken care of. And you know, like employee retention, I don't know what that's got to do with enterprise search, right? You know, unless it's like, oh, it makes your life a little easier. So like, I just, that's the process. I can't advise on the specifics. So I'd have to talk to them. Every government has a different problem. Like some governments have issues with like, you know, very complex political problems. Some, you know, some city governments, Johns Creek, has their biggest problem is there's too much traffic because they just started the city government. There's no way to actually plan the codes and ordinances to, you know, fix the traffic problems. Like
Yeah.
every government's got a different problem. And so that's where I'd start. Now, okay, now start there. Let's say they still land on enterprise search. Well, what's the value to them if you create enterprise search? Like, you know, is it you're going to be able to speed up an hour or two out of everybody's time per week, and that's 100 people it's going to help, and so that's 200 hours, and you pay them all $50,000 a year, so that's, you know, that's worth 200 times 50,000, or you have to figure out what the sort of like value creation is, and then you ask, well, why can't you pay for that if you're going to be saving that much money, right? It like there's now the other thing I'll mention is like you kind of talked about capabilities and hardware. You know, you can get, I mean, we have a Microsoft Azure partnership, for example, where we use their, you know, large language model artifacts in the cloud in a private air-gapped cloud environment. And actually in their facility, they've got specially engineered chips that actually like connect directly into the Ethernet that like make this all happen. I mean, it's pretty incredible. And you know, we just pay them by the token. You know, we don't have to go and invest in the hardware to go and do it. And it's not like it's using a, you know, an unstable model, et cetera. So I just think, I do think there's other cloud resources you can use too. So sorry, it's a very complex
Okay.
question actually as we're digging into it.
Yes, I know it's a lot going on. And I think something was kind of sold to them. You know, so I think it's a lot of sales talking. And but anyhow, yeah, so that sounds like a great idea. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Hello, Joe. I have a question. What with respect to your center and the U.S. AI Safety Institute Consortium, what kind of activities are you doing with them? How are you collaborating with the other universities? What kind of neat things are you guys thinking about?
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, it's been slow to develop, as I think all government administered projects probably are. The the current focus has been on synthetic content and detection of synthetic content and what they call red teaming the models that develop synthetic content. And look, I'm a little bit, I'm distinguished from the pack in the sense that, everybody right now is like, let's go figure out how these models, it's almost like, let's go break them and it's like a gotcha exercise. It's like, haha, like, and it's important to find, right? But they're like, you were supposed to say, like, here's a good example. If you go ask ChatGPT, what should my son do for a job? Before they fixed it, it would say he should be a doctor or a chief executive officer. And then if you go ask, like, what should my daughter do? It'll be like, she should probably be a nurse or like an HR manager or something, And so, there's clearly, there's biases baked into how it makes sense. Like just from our society's been biased. These models are going to reflect the data they were trained on. Cool. I would much rather see research that is like focused on a more scalable understanding and mechanism for why those data have been reflected through to the model and how we need to rebalance them in some sort of like reliable methodology, as opposed to what red teaming is, which is just like, well, I tried it with not just my daughter and son, but then I tried my cousin. And clearly there's cousin bias here. And it's just, you just keep trying. It's just random like shots in the dark. So, I'm sorry. I know I'm probably insulting some people, but like, it's important to audit. I think it's very important to audit so that people have a baseline benchmark of what is going wrong. But what I want to see the USAI Safety Institute focus on is not, let's just have a benchmark. I want it to focus on like, how do we collaborate to fix these things? You asked where I want to see it go. One of the cool things about Emorys healthcare system is we actually have like all these technology-enabled rooms. We have ambient microphones that are like, they can listen to the conversations and make your patient notes. And we've got like the radiomic stuff, which is like the radiologists will get feedback from the computer about where they think the problems are on the scans. Saves a lot of time. Like that type of stuff, I think can only be developed at a place like Emory or like a big, gigantic hospital system with a very diverse patient database. And it has to be shared with the world because, you can't do that in the middle of like Albany, Georgia, or like, even Columbus probably couldn't do that, on the border between here and Alabama, right? So I think that's what I'm more excited about is using some of these cool, unique things we have going for us to like benefit the rest of the country.
So I have a question. All right, thank you. So what are the most challenging problems you had at the beginning of the center?
Oh boy. Look, I don't need to preach about this. You guys know what the problems are, right? It's, the beautiful thing about academia, which we are all in, is we all have the ability to, and it's protected, to discover what we want to discover and investigate what we want to investigate. But the trade-off is that nobody can tell me what to do. And, when you're trying to do collective action at a university, like there's, do you want to go fast? Well, you got to tell people what to do, or at least you wish you could. And so it's been a real tight, like relationship building exercise. And it takes a lot of time, to go and meet with people and build the relationship, discuss it, take their feedback. And then actually, do you guys, I'm actually a political scientist by training. Do you guys know what a log roll is? You ever heard of that? A log roll happens in Congress where somebody wants one thing, another person wants this other thing, and 3 other people want this other thing, but you can't make any direct one deal. So the way you do it is you get, oh, I'll give this to you, I'll give that here, you go here, you do that. And like, it just makes a big deal basically, and it all just works. And that's how like bills are passed. And like, it's very similar in a university is you need somebody who can do the log roll, which is like, I heard your concerns, I heard these concerns, I heard these, you can do this, you can do that there. And that just takes time. And that's part of my job. So that's been the main challenge.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think we're coming up on time, but this has been a nice conversation. Hopefully this is helpful.
Yeah.
Any closing thoughts from anybody?
I would say that it's really good to hear from you about your experience and the historical context of how Emorys AI activity started and what you see for its future. And we have a similar initiative, but we are a public university, so we do not have the kind of endowment that a private university might have. So we are sort of certainly resource limited from that aspect. And our initiative started kind of both as a bottom-up and a top-down approach, in the sense that the provost office funded me and Jerry to put together a university-wide initiative, but the real participation came from the faculty, that we kind of publicized this to all the colleges, all the faculty, and said, just as you observed, faculty have the freedom, that the academic freedom provides a unique opportunity to build things, but things cannot be built by order from above, like in a private industry, for example, right? So we asked faculty, would you like to join us? And we don't have much money, but let's kind of pull together a group and then come up with ideas. And we have now about 140 faculty from all of our 12 colleges participating in some form or the other. And so it's now primarily being continued as a bottom-up activity. And hopefully that will then provide more funding from potential donors and all in the future. But it is it's a long-term project to really create an AI culture across the university.
And
So-
Hari, if I can add to that, I mean, think about degree programs too. I'm sure you guys are thinking about it, but like, if you can't attract the donors right away because you got to show them what's going on.
Right.
Degree programs, if you can get the intellectual coherence and sign off and the committees and the credit, all those things, that's one of the number one ways to generate revenue, right? And if you could do an AI degree in plus, in our case, right, like business administration or plus healthcare administration, things like that, right? Like those could be, especially for pre-professional, those could free up money.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So it's really glad to hear from you how this process is working at a different university. We can always learn from others. So thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. And best of luck. And if I could be helpful, you let me know.
Thank you so much. Had a good one.
Thank you so much.
Yep, my pleasure. Okay, see ya.
Bye-bye.